Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Great turnout. So I'm just going to get the thing started on the network or your internet. Again, if you've not connected, go to your network settings, Netgear 55, and your password is ChummyHat352, and that's lowercase c. Netgear 55, ChummyHat352. And if you don't connect, just grab me and I'll get you connected. All right, we're going to turn the microphone over to Steve.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you all here. Again, a great turnout. You see what is going on here is great for our sport also. Quickly kick it over here and get this thing rolling. I want to thank Scott and his crew here, of course, for opening up the center here at Arrowhead. They always do a great job, so any issue that comes up, see Scott. I'm sure they'll take care of it. How about a round of applause for Scott? Moving on my list of dignitaries here today, we have our IBCA president, Jason Freidenberg from Richmond 40 Bowl. Jason, you have a few words for us?
No, but just everyone, glad that everyone came today. We've got a lot of knowledge. Ron's phenomenal. We're learning about a lot of the mental game aspects there, and then we've got the RVP program later. So just welcome everyone today. Hope everybody gets something they can take back and teach the kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next on the list, Tom Taylor here at the Triple Crown Pro Shop has 45 bowling balls that we are going to raffle off. Once we get everybody checked in, we're going to go out and put your tickets in. We'll draw them and he'll post the list of the numbers. As you get a chance to check, would like to go, the first number gets the first choice, right on 3 could get Fred Bowl 45. So through lunch hour, whenever they get a chance to check the numbers, and we'll go that way and get rid of the 45 balls. Next then, moving into our program, and again, I think we have a great program set up all day today. Ron Hatfield, John McCarthy back here, Daniel Smith with the team app. So you guys are here, you're going to get on the ground level. If you've got people at home that weren't able to make it, they need to see it, let them know that this is a live web stream today. Go to our high school website, they can watch, or after today, this video chat will have posted on our site that you can go back and review things you missed, or again, you have coaches who were able to make it today. Our first speaker, and he's got a long list which he cut from the flyer.
Don't do it.
Just add it to that. He's a USBC Gold coach. He was a head coach at Arizona State University. He's the head coaching professional of Palace Coaching Group of USA. Coaching consultant for Sterling Bowling Club in Scotland. Pro Shop owner. Storm player staff. Turbo coaching staff. Central Ohio USBC Hall of Fame. 91 coaches on All-American at Ohio State University Bowler of the Year. High game of 300 he's done a few times, and high series of 847. He was here at our first clinic we had back in 2005, here on the reroute of the return, Ron Hatfield.
Thank you. Am I on? Am I on? Yeah? Okay. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Scott. I was trying to remember what year that was. Thank you for reminding me. 2005, I was in this room, and then I remember going out and we did like a drills clinic, I think, the next day. So that was a lot of fun. I can't believe it's been 14 years since I've been back here. But when I was asked to do this several months ago, I was very excited about coming in and speaking with you because I was a high school coach, and I'll never forget how it started. I was minding my own business one fall day, and Julie Wells, who was the assistant manager of the Palace at the time, called me and said, "Hey, we're starting high school bowling in Ohio. Would you be interested in coaching?" Sure, why not? I had just gotten my silver, I believe, and it sounded interesting. I said, "But on one condition, you're going to help me." She said, "Okay." So we set off on this venture. We had no idea what we were doing, honestly. We had no idea. And I tell everybody this because it is so true. We made so many mistakes. We really did. We messed up a whole lot that whole year. And fortunately, I think now looking back, we were at least somewhat smart enough to realize that we did make those mistakes. And we used the whole off season to reevaluate what we did wrong, what we could have done better, and try to make that better for the following year. And each year we tried to improve, just like I'm sure all of you are doing. How many of you are first-time coaches or within your first 3 years? Yeah, a lot of you. So the other thing that I found out when I was preparing for this was that there's a lot of level of experience in here. How many of you have coached high school bowling for 10 years or more? Yeah, there's a lot of different levels of experience. So that was a challenge for me to try to make this appropriate, interesting, and worthwhile for all of you. So I hope I'm hitting on the topics that will help you this season with your players. We're going to go over physical game. We're going to go over some lane play and eye targeting, a little bit about the mental game, and then something very important to me recently, more so recently, and that is what really is the pocket? I think as bowlers, how many of you bowl? Everybody in the room pretty much, yeah. I think we all have a general misunderstanding, I know I did, of what the pocket really is. And we'll go over what that is, what it's not, and then why it's important. So we're going to go through all four of those aspects. Please, anytime during the presentation, please ask questions. We have plenty of time. I know Steve has told me in advance, and Scott, I hope this is okay with you. He said if I run a little bit over, it's okay. So I don't know how long this is going to go, to be honest. We'll just kind of run with it and see how we do. But please ask questions because I want to make sure that I do hit all of this to a point where it's going to help you immediately with your players and hopefully with your own game. A lot of coaches who come to my bronze and silver classes actually are there either for themselves as bowlers or later on they find out that, yeah, this helped me too. It wasn't just for my players, whether at high school or college. So with that in mind, do you have any questions before we start about the format? I know you have the presentation in front of you. I do that for a reason. I know that when I attended things like this, the one thing that really annoyed me was that what I had in front of me was not what I saw up here. And I didn't like that. So I made sure, and I asked very nicely of Scott and Steve if they would make copies for you because I want to make sure that you had exactly in front of you what I'm going to be presenting. Now I will have some videos embedded in the presentations that obviously you don't have the picture of the video on your paper, but we'll go through some video analysis and I'll show you some things to look for that I look for, and hopefully you have room to make some notes if you want to do that. So let's get started. And like I said, please stop me at any point and ask questions. Let's keep this very informal, very fun, very loose, relaxed. About halfway through, try to find a stopping point to take a 5-minute break or so to stretch your legs. But let's go through the physical game first. We're starting here with some things that I think are very important because the other thing when I started coaching, I got my silver back in 2000, I got my gold in 2005. And I know that in that bronze, silver area of when I first started doing a lot of coaching, I really screwed a lot of people up, like a lot. And now I know why, because I was coaching for looks. I wanted people to look better. Like I knew in my brain how they should look. How arrogant is that? But I had that thought, and I don't know why that came about, but I'm glad that I did, because it quickly made me stop myself and realize that's not the way to coach. I may have made people look better, but they bowled worse. So what did we gain? Nothing. What's important is the function. So we're going to go through that. What's a liability in a bowler's game? What's uniqueness? Just because it's unique and maybe doesn't match the criteria of what your eye wants to see doesn't mean it's wrong. So we have to make sure that we keep that in mind. Think about it. How many bowlers have you seen that look alike? None. I have what I tell people the best job in the world. I get to do this for a living. I get to do that for a living. You know, I'm a pro shop operator. I don't drill balls. I hate drilling balls. God bless all of you that do. I hate drilling bowling balls. But I am the co-owner. I'm the coaching part of the pro shop. I want to be out there. I want to be in here. I want to do this. And this is the best job ever. I get to go around the country, and I actually traveled the world for a lot, for 10 years. I was all over the world for 10 years, and I've never seen two bowlers look alike, not even close. So how can we not take into account a bowler's uniqueness? That's what makes them good. So it doesn't mean it's a liability. And then more importantly, I want to try to help you identify what's a symptom and what's a cause. I do see a lot of coaches, and again, I did the same thing. This is how what I call screwed a lot of people up. I was trying to fix symptoms. So it's like trying to address a sickness and address the symptoms and not the underlying cause of the symptoms. So to start, let's take a look at this gentleman. Oh. I thought I had muted that. Sorry. I thought I had muted that. Is there any quick way to mute this? I don't know. Is that annoying, the sound? Can we turn that down somehow? Is there any way to do that?
We're used to it.
I know, but I really thought I'd gone through and muted that, so I apologize for that.
Remote for the projector, probably.
Yeah, let's see if we do. I've never seen this remote here. Chad, do you know how to do this? Any idea? No? Anybody? Hey. Hey. Thank you. For my first act. All right. So now, when you watch this video, just so you know, I'm not pausing this. The guy to the left of him is still moving. Right? I'm not pausing it. This is Eric. This is a bowler for Team Hungary. And this video was taken over in Cyprus at an international tournament. And next to Jason Belmonte, he's probably the second most videoed bowler in the world because of the obvious. Very unique. So just because he is unique doesn't mean we should jump in to try to change it, does it? If you watch this, looks pretty good right there. And he did that every time. And so a lot of coaches were always trying to fix him because it didn't look right. And that's where we go with looks versus function. Eric is very good. Eric is basically a one-step bowler, isn't he? So if we watch him, we have to make sure that we take into account this young guy's uniqueness and not try to fix something that doesn't need fixed. And I talked to him a lot, and I asked him, what kind of things were people trying to get you to do? The obvious, not the pause. And I said, do you have any injuries, any pain? No, none at all. Now, could that happen later in life? Sure, possibly. But at this point, he was a very good bowler for that country, very good internationally. And we have to make sure we remember the uniqueness. Okay, so generally speaking, when you go from stance to finish, this is where everything is generalized. Nothing in bowling is 100%. I learned from the great Fred Borden, the only rule in bowling is there are no rules. And so we always have to think outside the box. And nothing's 100%. But typically, as we go from stance to finish, we go from causes to symptoms. So almost everything that you see in a bowler's finish position at the moment of release, those are symptoms. Those aren't the things to fix. Those are the things we see that are telling us that something before that is actually the problem. So the more we go through the approach, the more we transition from the actual root causes to the symptoms. Imbalance. How many times do bowlers complain of imbalance? How many times do bowlers complain of release inconsistency? Those are symptoms. We can't fix those. We have to fix what's causing it, and then that will start to get better. So typical causes in a bowler's approach, timing. Timing is the most important thing. Timing's everything. But timing is also one of the causes of a lot of the symptoms that we see. The symptoms that we think we want to fix, that we think we need to fix. The swing, swing direction, swing speed, swing loop. All the parts of the swing is typically a cause. And then posture. One of the things that I think is very underanalyzed, underused in our sport is posture. What is a bowler's posture front to back, side to side? That is going to take care of a lot of the symptoms that we want to fix in bowlers. T plus S plus P, timing plus swing plus posture. These are the basic priorities, and when not maximized for a bowler's game, they can cause many of the symptoms that we see as coaches and that bowlers complain about. I know that you hear this all the time when you have bowlers on teams, or maybe you're giving individual lessons or working privately with somebody. Most of the things bowlers complain about are not the actual problem. It's the symptom. It's the thing that we see. Everybody can see a bowler fall off balance. Everybody can see that. But that to you as a coach should be one of the greatest pieces of feedback that you use to diagnose what's really causing your bowler's inconsistency. Balance is something that you can't just fix in and of itself. There's something causing it. Bowlers want to be balanced in the finish. The natural motion of bowling is to be balanced. But when that can't happen, there's something causing that earlier in the approach that we'll look at. Symptoms include imbalance, very obvious, inaccuracy. So when a bowler complains of not being consistent hitting their target, that's a symptom. Typically, most bowlers are going to miss to the inside. So right-handers will miss left, left-handers will miss right. That is the most common inconsistency with accuracy. Another symptom is just any type of inconsistency they feel. So a lot of times, and I have to dig deeper with bowlers, they'll say, well, I want to work on my consistency. Where? That's a big word. You got to get more specific with me. Where are we working on inconsistency? Is it your start, the middle of your approach, your tempo, your release? There's a million things we can talk about being consistent. And then the release, question mark. Is that a symptom? Yes, it is, because now we're going to finish the equation. The release is a product of the timing, of the swing, and of the posture. So when those three are better for a bowler's game, then we make the release better, more consistent. So good or bad, balance is a great positive symptom. Imbalance, obviously, is a symptom that we have to take care of. The release, good or bad, is a symptom of bowler's timing, swing, and posture. We make those better, we make the release better. So when a bowler complains to you about, I want more consistency with my release, I'm dropping it occasionally, I'm hanging up, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, take a hard look at the T, the S, and the P, timing, swing, and posture. When you go to work with a bowler for the first time, I know I teach a lot of bronze classes, a lot of silver classes, and I know that the most common question from coaches is, where do I start? I see this bowler's game, where do I start? That's a great question. I had that same question when I started. And I would say those three things. That would be the three key areas. If you can find something with timing that relates to their symptoms, something with swing that relates to their symptoms, or posture, that's a great place to start. Because those are the core fundamentals of every bowler's game. And that will make the release better. So let's talk about timing. This is a general guideline of ball height based on body structure. This is not a 100% rule. Generally speaking, the larger the person, stronger, we go with a lower ball position, and the smaller, maybe younger person, we go with a higher ball position. And that is going to be based on two things. One is going to be timing, because ball position height can obviously change timing. It's also going to be for tempo. Now, how many of you have ever had any type of class with me, bronze, silver, anything? How do I feel about speed? I like ball speed, yes. Anyone that's had a class with me, you may have forgotten my name, and that's okay, but you will remember that it is ball speed, ball speed, ball speed. Because the laws of physics dictate kinetic energy. The faster the ball goes, the more kinetic energy, the more pins we knock down. We're throwing a 13, 14, 15-pound ball at over 35 pounds of sticks over 60 feet away. You need ball speed. It's not revs, it's not hook, it's not entry angle, those are very little. It's all about ball speed. And so a lot of this is going to be determined on what that bowler needs to maximize their ball speed. And I know that if you've bowled at any point during your life, and if you think about this, all of you can say, yeah, that's happened. Everyone in this room at some point in your life has been told to slow down. And probably that's something that you might say quite frequently to your bowlers. And I'm going to ask you to reconsider that before you say it. And the reason is, when you slow a person down, of course it's going to make them feel better. Everything you do in slow motion is easier. Boy, that felt easy. The ball just tumbled down the lane. No ball speed. I will not knock the pins down. Kinetic energy is half of mass times velocity squared. Velocity squared. That's the most important variable. So if we move the body faster, we throw the ball faster, we knock more pins down. If I throw the ball 17 miles an hour and hook at two boards, Or if I throw it 9 miles an hour and hook at 7 boards, what's going to strike more? Obviously the faster ball. It's all about velocity. So please, I'm just asking you from this point forward to consider a few different things throughout the day. The first one I'm going to ask you to reconsider is slowing people down, because that usually is going to kill their energy, temporarily make them feel better. But if you think about it, if you slow someone down, what part of timing, swing, or posture have you really positively affected? Remember, we want to fix the broken leg, not put a Band-Aid over the broken leg. So when you slow someone down, you're just putting a Band-Aid over a bigger injury. We got to really fix the injury. So make sure that you keep people maximizing their tempo. I have coached a lot of people on tempo, and I've also coached a lot of people in dropping ball weight for tempo. So whether it was a combination of moving them faster and or dropping ball weight to get more velocity, it has worked amazingly. And I'll tell you how I learned this. You know, one of the things that I have done recently, and many of you may know this, is the book that I wrote with James Freeman. And I thought writing that book, our goal was to help coaches and bowlers. It helped me. It took us 3 years to write that book, and I learned more in 3 years writing that book than I've ever learned in the history of my coaching career. And I am so thankful for that, because I have changed the way I coach just based on the experiments and testing we had to do to get the information to write that book. It was amazing. And one of those things was speed. I dropped ball weight a year and 2 months ago, and I've never looked back. We wrote the book, and I'm standing at the foul line, and I'm watching my pin carry, and I'm like, what? What did I just see? Like, I know what I should see, but when I actually saw it in my own bowling ball, I was like, I've never carried a 10 pin like that before in my life. I've never slapped out a 10 like that before in my life. And so by living it and by studying it, I really started to change the way that I see parts of our sport. And ball weight is so inconsequential relative to ball speed. As far as pin carry goes, it's crazy. Ball speed is so much more important. So we have to be careful with high school bowlers. We have to be careful in raising their ball weight too soon, whether it's peer pressure, whether it's parental pressure, whether it's coaching pressure. Please take a second look at that before you raise the ball weight too much, because the ball speed is so much more critical. I absolutely promise you this. So this is one way to get more ball speed, is to raise the ball in the stance, get more tempo. This right here, speed, distance, and shape of the start. This is going to be one of your biggest sources of correction area. So if you do see something at the foul line as a symptom, whether it's the imbalance, it's the release inconsistency, inaccuracy, through your eyes and through what the bowler tells you, this part of the beginning of the approach is going to be one of the bigger areas. Trace it back, look at the speed of the start, look at how far the start is, and look at the shape of the start. If you look at those three areas from the side view, you are going to see very clearly different ways that you can maximize this bowler's timing, swing, and posture. So we'll take a look at a few videos here in a little bit. For tempo, if you want to slow a bowler down, you want to extend farther out. So if you want to slow someone down, and I hope that hardly ever becomes the case. I coach for a living. I do this 9 days a week, feels like sometimes. And I can't tell you honestly the last time I've slowed someone down. And I mean that sincerely. I cannot recall, as I'm speaking to you right now, the last time that I have physically slowed a bowler down. But if you need to do that, the more you extend the start out, that typically will slow them down. If you want to speed them up, then you want to do more of a hinge, more of that half moon start, because the feet then have to go faster to keep up. So you can change tempo by how you change the extension or shape of the start. Is there a such thing? Probably not. Anyone say there is? Is there a perfect timing? Yeah. Thank you. Perfect. Perfectly said. For every individual, there is a perfect timing. Everybody's timing in this room is different. Every player on your team this season is going to require different timing needs. So that, I think, as a coach, is where you're challenged the most. I think that's where you're going to be challenged, because you can't cookie cut. You can't just say that this is going to work for every player. And I know there's a lot of coaches out there who coach kind of a system. I would rather see you coach the player. Coach the uniqueness of every player because they have different body structures, different personalities, different knowledge levels, different years of experience of actually bowling. So you have to take all of that into account and factor in what is this bowler's best timing. And so for you to do that individually is going to be challenging, but it is different from person to person according to their style needs. Timing is defined as when the slide foot enters the finish and where the arm and ball are. So when the foot goes into the slide, not when it finishes, but when it first goes into the slide, where is the arm and the ball? That's where we kind of look at timing, and then we trace it back to see if there's any area of correction we can make that better. So I've got a couple of videos up here in a little bit. We'll show you some differences from early to late timing. But this is how I would ask you to look at it, is not when the slide finishes, but when the slide first begins. And if it's a planter, I'll show you a way to do that as well too. This is just a measurement. So when we talk about late, neutral, early timing, or power stroke or roll player, we look at when that slide foot has first begun. This isn't when the bowler is finished. This is when the slide foot is first on the approach completely, heel down, kind of like they landed the plane. And these are just measurements and definitions. This does not mean good or bad. So we have to be careful. And I know USBC, they kind of got away from the early and late words. A lot of the terminology in the bronze and silver has changed. They want to use more of roller, leverage, those types of terms because they thought they were more neutral. They weren't negatively connotated, where we think late and early means bad. You know, if you're not neutral, then it must be bad. Well, that's not true. These are measurements. So that bowler on the left who has late timing, that could be good. This bowler here who has roller timing or early timing, this could be good. This is where, again, you're challenged as a coach. Rather than look at a definition and automatically say good or bad, we have to look at symptoms. You have to listen to your player, you have to watch your player, combine those two, and determine if there's a liability attached to whatever you see here. We'll go through this more here in a little bit. So if it is a liability, early timing is very, very common. Late timing is fairly common in today's game as well. But if it's a liability, make sure you don't fix anything that doesn't need fixed. Don't fix it just out of looks like I did long ago. So if early timing is a liability, there's a couple things we can do. And this list can be longer, but I want to give you a few ways to address it. If you analyze early timing, some things you might try. I put faster footwork as the #1 plan A for me. Anybody know why? It's a win-win. More speed, right? Faster footwork is going to make a bowler less early, and it gives them more speed. Yeah, that's a win-win. That's a good day at work right there. That's a good day at the office. A bigger push shape. That's a way to fix early timing if it's a liability. Higher backswing or shorter step. So changing the step length is also a way to adjust timing. If the bowler has late timing that is a liability, then it would be the opposite. Lower backswing, smaller push shape, longer steps. What don't you notice here? Slower footwork. Please no. Like I said, you'll leave here today and you may forget my name. You will not forget speed. I can guarantee you that. So let's take a look at some videos here. So this is the way that we're going to analyze this side view is 2 lanes over. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say he's on lane 8. I'm in the corner of lane 10 at the foul line, so I get a panning of this bowler. Do all of you currently use video in your coaching? How many of you have not used video yet? Okay. I would ask you to try. And I know it's kind of scary sometimes because you don't know what you're looking for. The one key to remember is the correct angle. So when you're videoing a bowler, be on the ball side of them. So for a right-handed bowler, 2 lanes over to the right at the foul line, and then you just pan. And that will get the entire motion and to give you a very clear picture of timing, swing shape, length of things, posture, front to back. And so you can start to really analyze this. If you're doing a back video, you want to make sure you have the bowling shoulder in the middle of the video. So if you're off a couple of inches or a foot either way, it's going to really distort the swing direction. So make sure that with the video, the bowling shoulder is right in the middle of the video. And then I have a lot of bronze and silver coaches that come to the class and they've never done video. And video is a big part of those classes. I do a lot of in-class video analysis as part of those classes. And I want them to feel more confident and comfortable when they leave. And really, there's no shortcut. You just have to do it. I say just go video some of your league bowlers and just go home and play with the Huddle Technique or the Coach's Eye, whatever app you're going to use, and draw lines and just practice watching videos. You'll start to get more confident and comfortable with it. But video, as long as I've coached, and it's been about 79 years now, Ron, you're not that old. Okay, we'll work on that later, okay. I still never coach without my iPad. It goes everywhere with me. I will never coach a bowler without taking video because I know there's still things I can miss. In real time, that stuff happens quickly. So I want to see everything. And a lot of times when you're coaching bowlers who don't know you very well, their feeling of what's happening is going to probably supersede what you tell them unless they can see it. So if you tell them they've done something and they feel like they've done it differently, who do you think they're going to believe? They're going to believe their feeling. And so the video is kind of your way of proving that what you're saying is true. Because most of the time when bowlers are feeling something, especially when they're making change, what they feel and the reality are this far apart. And so you have to show them on video that what you're feeling is very wrong right now. That you have to trust what I'm showing you and what I'm telling you. So when we watch this bowler, what you try to get is a backstory. So I can tell you the backstory of this bowler is the imbalance is very common. So that's a very obvious symptom. His misses are generally and frequently to the inside, missing left. And the release was very inconsistent, almost like he dropped it occasionally. So those were the symptoms that I saw and that he told me. So right then I thought, well, okay, let's take a look at a side view and see what we can see as far as timing. So if we look at this, if we go to when the slide foot first is on the approach right there. So if we back it up again, you can see the heel is still up a little bit. Look how low that swing is. So if you look at a parallel line as a reference point, not everyone needs to be at parallel, I can tell you that right now. There's a big range from what would be a parallel line off his shoulder above and below. There's a big range that can work for a lot of bowlers. But if by definition, by that slide I showed you earlier, that would be considered a roller, wouldn't it? Now, in and of itself, that's okay. Unless I knew that there were issues, imbalance, missing left, release, inconsistency, unless I knew that, I can't automatically say that this is bad. That's why we have to make sure we get more information and that there are actual symptoms to tell us that this is a liability right now, that the early timing or roller timing is a liability. So if we go through and play this again, now we can kind of go back and start to see maybe some sources of correction. And I'll give you a hint. The sources of correction are in the very beginning because most timing corrections are going to be closer to the start. So if we pause this, watch the shape of the start. So not a real long shape to the start. So when I was thinking about ways we could do this, I thought, well, let's try increasing the shape and the length of that start. And then also move up a little bit. So if we go back and look where he starts, remember, one of the ways to make a bowler less early is to shorten the footwork. So if we move him up, we shorten the footwork, we increase the length of the start, and then this is what we got. Just moved up about a foot, wasn't a lot. But then what happened was by moving them up and by increasing that shape right there, then when we got to that same timing spot, so that was pretty immediate for him. This was probably a separation of maybe 5 minutes. Now, obviously he needs a lot more repetition to make it comfortable because when we made that change, he was feeling this. He didn't know what it looked like. I had to show him what it looked like. And then I had to show him the difference here versus before. And then the balance was very, very easy. Every shot from that point on, he was very balanced. So it took him a while to get comfortable with it. But once he did, he said this was a very easy change. And all we did was change the shape there with moving up on the approach. So one of the other things that I really recommend you do as coaches is to understand that you're going to be wrong every day. We are like the weather forecasters of bowling. We can be wrong half the time and still keep our jobs, and that's okay. I coach 9 days a week. I'm probably wrong 10 days a week. I'm wrong a lot. But I'm okay with that, knowing that it's not really wrong, it's just that the plan A wasn't the best plan. And so what you need to have in the back of your mind as a coach is plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, all the way to plan Z if you need it. Because every time you introduce a correction idea for a timing, swing, or posture, it doesn't guarantee it's going to work. Nobody's going to get that right the first time every time. No chance. So if this had not worked for him, I would have had a plan B we would have gone to, or plan C, and kept on doing it. How do you know? Well, he's got to do it more than a couple shots, right? After one shot, you can't say, well, that didn't work. You know, give it several shots before you say, okay, it's time to go to plan B now. That is the same way we coach out there. Right now, these kids out there are making a lot of wrong adjustments. But it's not them. It's just the fact that we're bowlers, and that's what happens. The best way to bowl is to know that your adjustments aren't going to work the first time every time. That's okay. You give it one shot, you try something else. Plan B. Just like our job working a physical game, we have to have a plan B. So fortunately, this worked for him, but it doesn't always work that nicely. So now we'll go with a two-hander. How many of you have not coached a lot of two-handers? Yeah, that's very common. And they're going to be more and more, so we have to get comfortable with that. And it's not that hard. It really isn't. And there's a lot of similarities between the two. So the balance that this young man has is very good. This was not an anomaly. He was balanced every shot. But he also had a very significant concern with accuracy. As most bowlers, missed to the inside. For him, it was mostly down lane that he was missing. He could not project it right like his ball roll needed him to do. So we had to look at that. And I tried to kind of look at his overall approach. Very good. I don't think he really moves that quickly, though. And I say that knowing that he's a two-hander. I want speed for everybody, right? But two-handers obviously need more because of the rev rate to make that matchup work. So even though he wasn't imbalanced, he didn't show any obvious visual symptoms of being early, let me show you what happened here. Because he starts way back on the approach, see right there, that looks pretty good. That's a really good position for a two-hander. You see how his arms are bent at 90 degrees? He creates what we call a swing box. And that swing box, in my experience, needs to put that ball at or slightly above the middle of the head. So if the ball is even with the head or slightly above with those arms bent like that, generally the timing is going to be pretty close for that two-hander. But we can't even see the foul line right now. So this is what I call breathing room. Too much. So a bowler, when I look at timing, I'm looking at swing height at a certain position in the approach closer to the finish, but I'm also looking at how much room do they have left. Are they right on top of the foul line where they don't have any breathing room, or are they way back where he's got way too much? So a bowler who has a good look of timing, but they're too far back, they will exhibit early timing symptoms that are a liability. A bowler that is too close to the foul line with a good timing look, they will exhibit late timing symptoms that are a liability. So as we go forward now, we can see he's got a lot of area to cover, and it's just too much room. So I had to think about, well, he starts all the way back on the approach, taking 5 steps. So what I want you to look at is something that you'll notice when I stop this here, and it's the lack of the skip, the hop, that most two-handers have. Not all of them. They don't all need one. But he has a very, very long power step, especially for a two-hander. And when you're trying to alter timing that you consider a liability for a bowler, and you're looking at step length, I will ask you to please look at that power step, the one right before the slide, the next to last step. If you look at that power step length and you can change that to alter their timing, that's one of the best areas to do it, especially in this case right here where his power step is way too long for him. So I thought, okay, we're going to shorten that step significantly, and then we're going to increase the tempo a little bit. So as with the other gentleman, I moved him up. So he's farther up on the approach. And all I instructed him was, I said, okay, I want you to really think about that fourth step. I want you to exaggerate it like it's almost nothing. And then we're going to try to pick up your tempo a little bit. I didn't tell him to skip. I didn't tell him to hop. That was a natural byproduct. So with two-handers, the more you increase tempo, the more you'll get that natural skip and that power step. Again, don't worry if they don't have it. If their tempo is good, their ball speed is good, their timing's good, there are a lot of good two-handers who don't have the skip or the hop. It's just a common characteristic. But by moving him up and shortening the footwork and then having him to really think about a very, very short power step, he naturally got the hop in. And this was a half-hour lesson. So he was able to really accomplish, and this was a gentleman of about 30 years old, and he's only been bowling two-handed at that time for less than a year. So for him to assimilate to that change very quickly was impressive. Yes?
Does the skip help with ball speed? Because it seems like moving him up, even if his tempo changes, the ball speed is going to be less, or it's going to be affected somehow.
Right. Yeah, usually moving someone up on the approach is going to slow them down. But with him, I could speed him up because we were taking that power step from here to here. So we more than gained the room back in shortening that step. So I could still have him go quicker. The power step, the hop, will not in and of itself generate speed. The hop is a symptom of good tempo with the correct step length. Yeah, good question. Anybody else? Yeah, two-handers are going to be very common. Probably virtually every team in this room is going to have a two-hander, if not several. And if not this year, maybe next year. And so, again, with a lot of coaching, if you don't have a lot of experience currently with a certain style, ask someone who does. There are a lot. How many coaches in here feel comfortable coaching two-handers? A lot. So there's a lot of resources in this room, and I'm sure a lot of coaches that aren't here today that could help you. We're all in this together. We're all trying to make bowlers better. We're all trying to get these bowlers to maybe bowl college and then go on to bowl adult leagues and tournaments and maybe the professional level. So we're all in this together to help each other. I know you want to beat each other on a given weekend, right? But we're all in this together in the long run. So if you don't know or you're kind of stuck on what to do for a two-hander, reach out to someone. Please, reach out to me. That'd be great. I'd love to help you. So let's take another look. Now this will be a situation that's different than the first two. We had a one-handed early timer that was a liability, and then we had a two-handed early timing liability. Now we're going to see the opposite end. So the imbalance was every shot, literally every shot. I don't think you stayed balanced if you put a $100 bill at the foul line. You stay balanced, you get this. He couldn't do it, no chance. And what would happen was he would also tend to miss inside because with a lot of bowlers who have late timing that's a liability, because the swing is so high, they pull it down too quickly because they're late, and then they miss to the inside. They close the shoulders and miss to the inside. That's why missing to the inside is the most common symptom of bowlers, because early timing, that is a very common symptom. Late timing, a lot of people think that's going to make you miss to the right or to the outside. It's the opposite. Because you're so late, you yank it down, you're actually closing the shoulders and then missing to the inside. So I told you I would tell you about the plant. So right there. If we look at when the heel touches the floor, right there. So if you're wanting to get an idea of the arm and ball position, I mentioned earlier that with a slider, you do it when the heel first touches the approach. Well, with a planter, what you want to do is take the video back halfway with that foot. Let's say right about there. And then you look at the measurement. That's a good way to do that. So if you have a planter, and you'll have a lot of kids in high school that plant, and that's okay for now. then you want to take that heel, that step back halfway, and that'll give you your measurement. And then again, you can look at that and say, okay, by definition, as a measurement, this bowler has late timing. Doesn't mean it's bad, but in his case, it was a liability because he had very, very little chance of staying balanced. He had very little chance, more importantly, of hitting his target. And also ball speed was inconsistent because when you pull that swing down, it's not a natural movement. That's going to change that consistency. So we had to look at ways of altering his timing. I think you can see the obvious. Lower the backswing. He was just way too high with that backswing. Everything else looked pretty good in the beginning. The start was fine. Ball position wasn't too high. Start was good. Moved the ball out relatively similar to the second step. Not a lot of shape. So there weren't a lot of changes that were obvious other than the higher backswing. So one of the things that I will get to a little bit later as far as what I would really like you to take from this is the word of exaggeration. When you're making corrections with a bowler, if I were to tell him, okay, your backswing is, well, you can see it. I'd show him the video. I want you to bring that down to where the backswing is just at or slightly above parallel as your highest point. No chance he would do it. It would still be there, as high as it was. Because think about it as a bowler. How many of you right now, if you had to draw a picture of your backswing height, how many of you would nail it 100% correct? Right. Yeah, because we don't see it. Right? We have no idea where it is. We kind of feel where it is, but usually we're not very close. So the exaggeration in changing a movement is a very quick way. And so with this bowler right here, what I would do is I would actually have him imagine that his backswing is going to stop right there. So I actually told him, I said, okay, Luke, this next shot, I want your backswing to stop by your right leg and bring it forward. And of course, he looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like, you want me to do what? Yeah, I want you to stop your backswing by your right leg and bring it forward. Okay. All right, you idiot, sure. And so what happens is this. Now, this was another day, but it was that same day that we saw some improvement where he actually is still at some point, to some degree, thinking that he's stopping the swing there, and the backswing goes to there. And so he's sliding now, balance is good, much better. So the exaggeration really works wonders. And I'll tell you this, I have had a lot of bowlers with late timing, that was a liability, and we did the lower the swing by thinking stopping the ball by the right leg or left leg if they're left-handed. I'm still waiting for the first bowler to be within 18 inches of the feel to where it really is. Because I asked him, I said, okay, Luke, where did that swing stop? He's like, it stopped right here. And I showed him the video. He, no way. I said, yeah. And I actually do that up on the approach as soon as he throws the shot so he knows that I'm not back editing the video, like trying to change it. It's like, no, man, you're thinking here, but you're still going to go, you're not going to stop it here. Good luck with that. It's not going to happen. But every bowler will tell you, yeah, it stops right here. And then you show them the video and they're like, wow. That's why bowlers can't necessarily trust their feel. That's why you have to use video. Please use video this year. If you've never done it, break it out. Huddle Technique, Coach's Eye are 2 great apps to use for video analysis. And it will enlighten your coaching eye, but more importantly, it helps the bowler to see what you're trying to change with them. And it will get them to believe you, because their feel is going to be totally different than what they see on the video. But the video doesn't lie. Yeah?
I noticed in the 2 videos, he had a brace on the first video, he doesn't have this. Was there something else going on there?
Yeah, he was in a brace for unnecessary reasons. And he was having some wrist movement going on. A lot of bowlers, a lot of coaches, a lot of pro shop operators, our first go-to when that happens is, oh, your wrist is weak. You got to be in a wrist device. And that is so false. I own 2 pro shops. I don't want to sell wrist devices. I know there are exceptions. I know there are people who have to have them. But those people are the big minority. Most bowlers are just not utilizing this finger right here, the index finger. That index finger is the trigger finger to control that wrist. So if the wrist is flopping around, usually the farther the wrist gets from your center of gravity, that's when we lose that power of the wrist. So it's here, and it's here. And if we firm up that index finger pressure on the ball all the way through the swing, that wrist will stay in place. Try it. It works wonders. And it will eliminate a lot of wrist devices for bowlers who don't need that. If a bowler has to have a wrist device for other reasons, pain management, surgery, something that they can't overcome, and there are exceptions, of course, make sure that they were fitted in the pro shop with the wrist device on. Because with it on, with it off, it does change the span. So we want to make sure they're fitted correctly. But if a bowler is wearing one simply because they were told their wrist is weak, then I would ask you to try to wean them off of that by using the index finger pressure more effectively. It works very quickly. So how do you know when to make a correction? You know now that to start, if you're looking at video and you want to start analyzing a video properly, look at timing, swing, and posture. Those are the three biggest priorities and areas that you want to make sure are good for a bowler. You want to maximize those three for every bowler. You're also going to make sure that you visually take in any symptoms that you see that you think might be cluing you in to a liability. Make sure you listen to the bowler, ask questions. I always ask every bowler, even the ones I see regularly, where are you currently missing your target, to the left or to the right? Because that tells me a lot. I ask about imbalance frequency. I ask about any inconsistency, anything they feel that they think is not where it should be. Because I can't know what they're thinking or feeling. I have to ask questions to get that information. I just have my eyes. I want all three sources of information so that I can make a better judgment. Always ask yourself this question. This can't be oversaid. Is what I see that my eyes don't like causing this bowler a liability? Is what I see that my eyes don't like causing this bowler a liability? I wished I had known this when I first started coaching. Because when my eye didn't like something, I fixed it. That was awful. I made so many people worse. And then I finally, quickly, fortunately, realized that's not the way to do it. You got to coach for function. What is what I'm seeing doing for this bowler's game, good or bad? It doesn't matter what it looks like. So is what I see that my eyes don't like causing this bowler a liability? I'm sure there are 90-some bowlers out here. I'm sure there are a lot of youth bowlers out there that do some unique things. And when you first watch them, you might go, eesh. You know, you might think that in your head or actually physically do that. I've seen that happen too. And that is just because what you want to see generally in a bowler is not what you just saw. But before you jump into, well, that has to be fixed, I hope they're working on that, or I want to help this bowler with it, ask yourself this question. Is what I see that just caused that reaction, is it really causing a problem for this bowler? I had a bowler one time who came to me and he knew in his mind what I was going to say. Every coach I go to tells me I have to fix my first step. So I know you're going to fix this, so I just hope you can help me do that. So I videoed him. And what he did, you ever watch like Scooby-Doo or the cartoons where, you know, they take off running and they run in place for a while and they finally take off? That's kind of like what his first step looked like. It looked like he was on ice. He was just kind of running in place, and then he took off. And at the bottom of the swing, oh boy, I would have paid him money right there and then to have it. I said, can I please have your finish? Can I please have your release point? And so after I watched the video with him, and he was that way every time at the finish, I said, why? Why would I want to change that first step? He said, because everybody says it looks bad. Maybe. But are you like that at the foul line every time? He's like, yeah, I feel pretty good at the foul line, but they said that that step is really hurting me. Tell me how they told you 100% for sure that that step was affecting your release. Well, they didn't. Exactly. Because that step is unique to you. That made you unique. That made you you. It is not doing anything negatively to your game. Yeah, visually it stands out and people look at you and go, what are you doing? But at the bottom of the swing, I bet you they're jealous. And so he was shocked that we worked on other things and never talked about that step again. But I think he was happy because he finally got an answer that made sense to him. No one could tell him why it was a liability. They just told him, you got to fix that. Well, that's not a good enough answer. We have to give the bowler a reason why. And so that was a really good example of uniqueness. It always comes down to separating looks from function. You have to make sure that any changes serve a function to this bowler and not just to make them look prettier. How many PBA or PWBA bowlers have you watched that you go, ew, how are they a pro? We've seen a lot of pro bowlers over the years that definitely are not textbook bowlers, right? A lot of swings, a lot of motions, a lot of things that they do that we're thinking, I look 10 times better than them. Well, but they're on tour and you're not. So think about that. You may look better, but their function is obviously better. So make sure that any changes you're making to a bowler are actually serving a reason. There's actually a purpose behind it that's going to take care of any symptoms they have, any concerns they have, and that you're not just trying to make them look like a cookie cutter pretty bowler. Always listen to the bowler for symptoms because, again, looks you have, but the feel and the thoughts they have. And usually bowlers, the things they don't like about their game are the symptoms. I'm off balance every shot. My release is inconsistent. Well, okay, those are symptoms. Let's find out what's causing that. If you take that information and combine it with what you see, then you're going to be able to determine exactly what change, if any, is needed. So always ask lots of questions of your bowlers. Always listen to what they're telling you because, again, their feelings are their feelings. It's their opinion. It's not wrong. Whatever they're telling you is factual. You need to listen to that. You're the bowling doctor. Think about when you go to a doctor. Why are you going? Because you have symptoms. You don't feel good. So the doctor's job is to listen to you, do some testing to get some further information, take all of that and assign it to a cause, and then prescribe a cure. That's what you do, just in the bowling world. You're taking symptoms, you're assigning that to a liability or a cause, and then you're coming up with a plan A, plan B, plan C, cure. It's that simple. It's those 3 steps every time. So let's look at the swing now. We have what we call a narrow positive swing loop. This is a very common variable among really, really good players. You're going to see a lot of timing variances among bowlers. You're not going to see as many swing direction variances in really good bowlers as you see in timing variances. So if the swing stays in that narrow gold bar the entire time from stance to follow through, their direction and their accuracy probably is pretty good. So for a left-hander, it's this way, right-hander that way. Some variances on that would be, this is the most common one. The blue line is the push direction. So if the bowler pushes to the outside and that swing comes in behind them, typically we'll see a reverse swing loop that goes to the outside and then they miss to the inside. This is the most common, by far, swing liability that you will ever see. And when you do it on video, it becomes very obvious. This, again, is that great positive swing loop. Very rarely, if you push to the inside, if a bowler pushes too much to the inside, what they might do is just create a wider positive swing loop and then miss to the outside. But that is much, much more rare than this. Most bowlers that push in that direction as that blue line is pointed, they think it's straight. They actually think they're pushing straight. And so that's where video, again, becomes very critical. And so to correct that, if I were to say, okay, push straight, no chance. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. I have to tell them to push left. You've got to push it left in your mind to actually go straight. And it works very, very, very quickly. So this is a very extreme but very good example of that concept. So this young lady was missing, and I mean literally every shot left. And you're going to see here in a minute why. Every shot left. And even though she was balanced on this shot, that was rare. Yeah, the imbalance was very, very, very common. So as you can see, the push direction is severely out to the right. She thought she pushed a little bit to the right, but she had no idea until she saw it on video. So I knew that this was going to take some extreme exaggeration, but I typically start with 2 lanes left. So what I'll do is I will use the numbers down over the lanes above the pins. I think we were on 28, let's just say. I can't really read the numbers anymore. So I start with 26. I said, okay, you see the numbers over the lanes? Yeah. I want you to look at the number 26 and then look back at your target, but feel like you're going to push to 26. And again, 3 heads. You want me to push 2 lanes left? Yes, I want you to push 2 lanes left. And so we did that, and that's always my starting point. Very little change. Most bowlers that have that type of push direction issue, that's a liability because it causes a reverse swing loop, which, by the way, reverse swing loop, common symptoms, imbalance, missing inside of target, and very little chance of changing hand position if they ever want to. No chance at all. And a larger laydown distance at release. So from the ankle, the ball is much farther from the ankle at release. So those are the common symptoms. So we started with 2, very little change. Went to 4, very little change. Most bowlers between 2 and 6 lanes, it's going to take care of it. Because most bowlers are not this extreme. So if you have them imagine pushing 2 to 6 lanes left, that's usually going to get that push very straight. By the time we finished, I'm going to let you see it first. This was probably within 20, 25 minutes. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the swing direction is going to cause a lot of your drift issues. So if we look at this one again, so we'll go through. I'm going to go a little faster here. I want to go to the ending because I want you to see, because of that straighter push, I want you to see where that laydown distance is now. See that? Okay, never talked to her about it. Never said, hey, we got to get that ball closer to your ankle at release. But if we go back now to the previous video, and if you remember that push direction that went way out to the right, obvious reverse swing loop, goes massively to the outside. So look at the distance there. So much bigger distance. And the footwork's going to change a lot. The number 1 cause in drift is swing direction. So with this video here, 14 lanes left. That's my record, by the way. That's my record. So she was thinking lane 14, she's on lane 28, she was thinking this to get what you see here. So trust exaggeration as a coach, but then you have to really implore your bowlers to trust the exaggeration as a feeling, because look how straight it is now, and she is thinking pushing to lane 14. So whether it's swing height, whether it's push direction, exaggeration works amazing, and it works quickly. So when you are looking at any movement that you want to change in a bowler, think about a way to exaggerate it. So if it's on this end of the spectrum and you need it here, have them think this end of the spectrum. You will see the change immediately, and I would video the first one. This is always my kind of, I always try to have fun with coaching, right? So when I do the swing height, I always video the first one. I said, okay, where do you think it was? And of course, they're never close. So if you video the first one, it's usually the best one. And the reason is because they have no feeling attached to that exaggeration yet. They're trusting your word. And so the exaggeration is usually going to be the best on the first shot. Then, even though you show them the video, the fact that they felt this in their mind, they're going to back off of that a little bit. So the next several shots tend to be not as good as the very first one. And then you have to really tell them to keep trusting that exaggeration for a while, for several practices, several hundred shots before it becomes natural. And then the change becomes automatic. So exaggeration is your best tool as a coach. Now with posture, front to back, we're going to look at that first, and then we'll look at side to side. For a one-hander, we want to keep that posture change very, very minimal. The idea is to not let the body follow the ball, because this can and will create timing issues. When you change the posture, you change the swing height. And so that's going to create inconsistency and general posture timing issues. So we want to make sure that we're not following that. Two-handers, of course, have to follow. If you're a two-hander, you must follow that ball into the swing. Now, side-to-side posture can also cause liabilities. Now we're talking swing direction. If there's not enough upper body side tilt, whatever it is for that bowler, then the swing that will always stay to the outside of the head. So the swing never gets in line with the head at any point, typically misses to the inside. If there's too much side tilt, if the body is tilted too much, then that swing can come in behind them too much and create that reverse swing loop. Reverse swing loop, think about this as you go through your season coming up. That is going to be the most common thing that you will see in all of your bowlers. And you may have not noticed it before if you hadn't done video or you didn't know what to look for on the swing. You will see a lot of reverse swing loops. So with this, we can see a couple of examples here. So if you watch this, gentlemen, this is an example of where the swing is always, and the ball, to the right of the head. At no point during the approach does the swing or ball get in line with the head. Imbalance, very common. Miss into the inside, very common. Drift to the right because of it. Ball's going to pull them that way, isn't it? So this would be a good bowler for a crossover step. But also some tilt. If you look during the approach, he never has any side body tilt. Watch how upright his posture is all the way through the entire shot. And also, in the beginning, his footwork. So not every bowler needs a crossover step where we take that step now in front of the left foot. Not every bowler needs one, for sure. But this gentleman certainly can benefit from that. So by getting his step to cross over, to get his body a little bit out of the way of the swing, and increasing this a little bit, it actually got his swing more in line. This was from a clinic I did over in England, and we had a lot of people. We did all the before videos. We never got the after videos. I went around and worked with each bowler, but I don't have the after video to show you, but the crossover step with the tilt definitely got the ball in the swing more in line. Now the drift was still there for a while, but it would gradually go away. So this would be a good example of someone who needs more. The best way to do it is not with the shoulders, it's to move the hips. So if I ask a bowler to tilt more, they'll usually just do this. Well, that's not changing the spine, that's just changing the shoulder. So what I'll do is I'll have them shift their hips to the left, and that will actually tilt the spine. So I'll take the hips this way, and the spine has to go to the right. And then they maintain that all the way through. And that drops the swing right in line with the head. This would be an example of someone who is overdoing it just a little bit. Watch this step. Watch this step. Watch the swing. Reverses out. Now, fortunately, he doesn't bring it back to where it's actually right of his head, but this is a PBA player, and he was having trouble, not necessarily at the arrows, he was having trouble down lane with accuracy. If he had to move in and really project it right, he had very little chance of making that happen because that reverse swing loop was really tightening up his launch angle and he couldn't get it to the right. So in his case, it was a lot of that first step, not overdoing that crossover step. So if you look at how far, watch where his heel is there, and then watch where his heel is when the first step ends. And because of that, that takes the upper body dramatically to the right, so it really tilts his body. And that drops that swing in too much behind him. So by straightening that step up and slightly getting the push a little bit straighter, it made his swing line a lot better. So you'll see posture issues, side to side, front to back, cause a lot of timing and swing issues. So as I said earlier, posture is really kind of underused in our sport, I think. We're all about timing and swing. And I think we need to be equally as into posture too. So the release, if we have timing, swing, posture maximized for a bowler, we've already said that makes the release better. Well, let's say that you have those three, as good as they can be for a bowler, but the release is still inconsistent, not as strong, not as whatever you want for that bowler, what they want. There are a few more items we can cover. We'll go through all 4 of these. You can clear the trail leg more. So this trail leg actually should be a little bit farther over. That takes the right side of the body out of the way. A lot of people think that getting that leg over to the side in the finish is for balance. That's secondary. Primarily, it's to get the right side for a right-handed bowler, is to get that side of the body out of the way so that I can swing through. If I keep my leg there, that hip becomes an impediment. Now I get that leg out of the way, it's much more space for the swing to come through. So clearing the trail leg will actually help the release. A firm sliding leg doesn't mean go as low as possible. In fact, most bowlers overdo that. The second most common thing you've probably heard as a bowler in your lifetime is get lower in the finish. We're told to slow down, get lower in the finish. Well, if we get lower in the finish too much, we're not firm. We're actually losing leverage. Sometimes we set the ball down too early, and the ball is actually hitting before the oil pattern. So when that ball is going to hit friction or lane before the oil, that's going to change ball speed and rotation immediately. So we want to get the ball out into the oil. So a firm sliding leg, but not too low. Wrist movement. This is affecting the finger movement. You only need 1 to 2 inches of wrist and finger movement to create a good rotation. In Indiana high school bowling, mostly on house patterns? Majority? Okay. So generally speaking, rotation to a higher degree, more wrist and finger motion at the release, is going to be better for house patterns. That type of rotation is generally rewarded on house patterns. So to get that, we just need to do it 1 or 2 inches. I'll show you a video here in a second of how to change that very easily. The other thing is the wrist position. If you flex or extend the wrist, this can significantly affect ball motion because you're changing the RPMs or the rev rate, if that stays static. So if the bowler stays static all the way through the swing in that strong position, or they stay static all the way through in this position, either way it's going to significantly change that bowler's rev rate. That'll change ball motion. So this is a good example of changing rotation. Watch this young lady's finger position at release, so very much behind the ball. That would be a great release for a lot of fresh sport patterns. So if she was bowling out here on this 1.4 to 1, I believe I heard, 35-foot pattern, that less rotation release is going to be very good to control the ball motion, especially when it's fresh. But on the house pattern, it doesn't create enough shape down lane that the house patterns want to see, that we get rewarded for. So if we stop this video at release, I want you to look at this before we go to the next one. Look at where her fingers exit the ball, right there. So if we look at the middle of the ball as 0 degrees, end over end, and we look at the side of the ball as 90 degrees, she's somewhere closer to the 0 end of things. So with this bowler, all the other things were good. The timing, the swing, the posture. So we had to do something to generate more rotation. Well, guess where I'm going to go with this? Exaggeration. So I had her hold her right arm out, stabilize her right elbow with her left hand, and I said, just flip your hand over as far as you can without letting the elbow move. Most people can go almost 180 degrees. And then I had her go down by her left leg in the finish position and do the same thing. And so most people are going to go around in front of the ball. I said, okay, do that. 3 heads. You want me to turn my hand in front of the ball when I release it? Yep. So what happens is this. I love the exaggeration because they think I'm crazy, and then we do this, and it's not crazy after all. So she's thinking on this shot of actually turning her hand completely around in front of the ball. And so what we see is this. Now look where they're exiting. That's a huge change in axis rotation right there. Her ball was shaping up down lane where she had no chance to do that before. And that was simply her exaggerating, turning the hand all the way in front of the ball at release without turning the elbow. We don't want to do this, but we just do this. Just turn the hand all the way over. And so that exaggeration works great. Now let's say you have someone who does it too much. There are bowlers who actually will turn it too much and get somewhat in front of the ball at release. Then that exaggeration is, okay, come up the back of the ball and release it just like this. Of course, they're not going to do that, but they're going to significantly reduce the rotation right away. So that exaggeration works in all aspects of the game regarding any movement during the approach. Be sure, please, I put them in red because these two things are so critical. Be sure to use video. Huddle Technique is free. It is not available on Android. It used to be. I just found that out this past summer that it was a beta version. They actually took it off of Android. So you can use Huddle Technique on Android, or on iOS, I'm sorry. Coach's Eye you can use on either iOS or Android. I think Coach's Eye is like $5.99, $4.99. It's cheap, very cheap. So virtually free on in both cases, whereas 15, 20 years ago, we had to pay $1,000 for a video analysis program and have a tripod, a big camera. It's as simple as using your iPad now, or your phone. I would recommend an iPad or a tablet of some kind to have a bigger screen, but if you don't, a phone will serve the purpose. But if you do that and you use exaggeration in making changes that you deem as liabilities, the improvement is going to be very, very, very quick. So in Ohio, I know we have roughly a month from tryouts until the first competition. What kind of time frame do you have here? About the same? So that month, obviously you all have your own agenda of what you want to accomplish, but I hope that in those first couple of weeks, you will use a couple of these things here. Because to make the bowlers games better as an individual, video and exaggeration will be your quickest way to get there. And remember, timing, swing, and posture are the keys. And we got to remember uniqueness. We don't want to take away from a bowler's uniqueness. We want to make them better. You know the company BASF? They don't make the products you use, they make the products you use better. Well, you're the BASF of bowling. You're not going to change the bowler, you're going to make that bowler better. Or how about this for uniqueness? I love this one. Remember, uniqueness is okay. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. Now you guys laugh. But again, this bowler is being unique, and this actually you can see my friend's thumb in the upper left-hand corner. So this was like a league that he was bowling in, and this guy is averaging like 190, 195. So before you make any major changes, you know, his 92-step approach, Fred Flintstone, might be okay. It works for him. So you got to make sure we keep that in mind. So any questions on the physical game, symptoms, causes, liabilities, looks, function, any questions on that? About what?
Two-board swing early.
Okay, the swing loop? Yeah.
So are you saying initially lay the ball down there to where it's finishing? You're not talking about where it swings out and back in?
Well, when you say two-board swing, was I talking about the loop or talking about the lay-down distance? What was I?
Early on, talk about two-board swing.
Two lane. Oh, okay. So the exaggeration. Okay, yeah, so it was 2 lanes. So if a bowler is pushing to the outside, if they're left-handed out this way, they need to exaggerate pushing inward 2 lanes as a starting point. Now, I will tell you that probably the majority of bowlers that you work with will need slightly more than 2 lanes, but that was an exaggeration to get the push straighter. Yes?
But repeat the question so those back here can hear what you're answering.
Yeah, so the question was kind of rediscussing the exaggeration of the push direction. So I said we'll start with a 2-lane push to the inside. So the young lady that was on lane 28 that had the massive reverse loop, I had her start by thinking push to lane 26, using the numbers over the lanes. So not something close, but a far visual reference to look at. And then usually you'll have to increase that. Most bowlers up to maybe 6 lanes, unlike her who was 14. I've had one other person that was that much, but that's the record so far. So that was the 2-lane exaggeration for the push. Any other questions? Yes?
What's your take on the tucking pinkies or untucking?
Now the question is, what is my take on tucking or untucking the pinky? It serves 0 purpose. It's for comfort only. So whatever, I can't tuck it. My finger's not built that way. It hurts. So whatever's comfortable, because it serves zero purpose. Yes?
I've got coaches in the same house that argue on how to teach their bowlers what they feel is right.
Yep.
I've got some of the coaches think they listen to Brad Angelo and Bowl U and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
His philosophy. Others that kind of follow the UFC policies or whatever. Can you explain where what you're teaching differs? Because I want all the coaches to watch these videos that didn't weren't able to get here. But I know what I'm going to run into is, well, Rick Benoit says, or Brad Angelo says, versus what you say. How do you handle that?
That's the great thing about coaching, is if we were all to go out there and to analyze, say, 5 bowlers, I would hope that there would be nearly 100 different opinions, because that's what's going to make that bowler better ultimately, and that's what's going to make us better as coaches.
Right now, it's messing up bowler because you got 2 people with
Right.
different attitudes trying to teach kids. No, I don't like the way you do it. You shouldn't do it that way. You should do it my way. Or you might have a parent and a coach with totally differing opinions, and it makes it tough on the kid.
It does, and I've come across this a lot, and I coach a lot of the high school bowlers in Central Ohio area, and I'm always very aware that they're being coached in high school by someone else. And fortunately, I know a lot of the coaches, but it doesn't mean we agree. We can respectfully disagree. So I will always ask the bowler, are you working with someone? What are they having you do? And I will recommend this, and I know this makes obvious sense, but I think it needs to be said, and we need to be careful of this. We don't ever want to badmouth anybody in the industry, even if you disagree. Pro shop, coach, bowling center, we never want to badmouth anybody, because we're all in this together, and those words will come back to haunt you. So if a bowler tells me they're working on something that I completely disagree with, I will word it very politically correctly. And I will make sure that the bowler thinks that that is good and that I respect it, but let's try something else, and then you decide. And I always tell the coach, hey, listen, I don't care, honestly, I really don't. If they choose to go with your route or my route, I could care less, as long as they get better and they're happy and they're comfortable. Because you have to go through sometimes a few iterations of different opinions before you find the plan A or plan B or plan C that works for you. So if it's you and I in the same house and we completely disagree, you and I at least need to talk. You and I at least need to say, okay, listen, we're in this for this bowler. Let's put our egos aside and let's figure out what's best for this bowler. And if they go with your way, great. Great, I'll learn from you that that worked better in this case, or vice versa. So I think in that situation, the coaches need to, even if they don't like each other, they need to at least communicate, because ultimately they're hurting the bowler if they don't. And if they do that and the bowler knows that it's okay to try different things and to pick the one that works for you and you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings, in the end it's okay. Yes?
It's just add that to Bob and others. Remember, this presentation is going to be web streamed and on video on our website. Have to go back and look at this.
Yeah, and I've had that. I have a coaching group back home, the RKH coaching group, and I have 17 coaches on my staff at the Palace. And 15 of those 17 are at least silver certified. So I have a pretty strong coaching group with decades and decades of experience and knowledge. And we don't always agree. And I tell them, you know, just because I'm bringing you into my coaching group, you do not have to be a yes man or yes woman. I don't want you to agree with me on everything. If you see something differently, go with it. I want you to go with what you feel. And then in the end, we'll figure out what's best for that bowler. And that's why I feel that the coaching groups that people create can be very strong if the coaches understand that. It's not about them, right? It's not about us. It's about the bowler. And if we keep that in mind and be okay to be wrong sometimes, because we're going to be wrong every day, like I am 9 days a week, then we'll all be okay. But they have to talk. I mean, there's got to be some communication. And if there's not, the bowler is going to pay the price, not the coaches. It's tough. I know. I hear that going on all the time. Yep. All right, let's take a 5-minute break, stretch our legs, come back in.
seats will reconvene, please.
Otherwise, they'll never see.
I know. Now, again, when we talked about this, Steve said I could go over. How much time can I go over?
Well, when